There's a big problem with Isekai in my opinion, and I'm here to talk about it. What's up guys, it's your boy, and today we are going to be talking about what I personally believe is the overarching problem with Isekai. Now before we do that, click the buttons that are down below there, specifically maybe the one that says subscribe and then the other one that says like, because those are the ones that, would make me happy. You can click any other buttons you want to, but those in particular would be most appreciated. Let's go ahead and get into the content though. I kind of started out watching anime as a rom-com guy. I liked watching the stories that go absolutely nowhere over the course of 30 different episodes, and then by the end it's like, I love you in this context as like a friend, and you're like, oh, now we need a second season. Those are the shows that I watch. So, I mean, take my opinion with a grain of salt, but this is just something of the few isekais that I've watched that I think is kind of an overarching problem, or something that I think that really could be expanded upon and make the genre a lot better, but I haven't seen done nearly to the extent that I would like. And to explain this point, I'm going to be using two shows. One is ReZero, and the other is The Eminence in Shadow. And I will only be referencing things from the very first episode. If you're concerned about spoilers, you can skip this video, that's fine. But it's only going to be talking about the first episode, so I won't be spoiling all that much. Before I begin, I just want to say that I've not watched the most isekais. I've kind of hinted at that, but it's true. I haven't. I've only watched a few, and my editor has watched a lot more. So I'm going to actually give him the opportunity, if he wants to, at this point in the video, to put in a little note or a video of his choosing to maybe give suggestions or maybe refute my point a little bit up front. Let me get into a couple that I think are examples of my point. Starting with ReZero. Because ReZero, I think, is the worst offender, and then The Eminence in Shadow had a lot more potential, and it just kind of squandered it. And it's okay for ReZero, because it just kind of snapped into it so quickly that I think we forgot about it. But then for The Eminence in Shadow, this problem dragged on to a point where I was like, but I wanted this, and you took the entire focus away from that. ReZero starts with Subaru. He's in a grocery store. He walks outside. Truck-kun. That is all the context that we are given. And now isekai literally means other world, which means that the focus of the show is on the other world. It's literally in the name, right? But the problem, I think, comes from the fact that we'd have zero, and I mean zero, character development for the protagonist or any even supporting characters in any sense before going into that other world. So it gives you just enough time to get invested into what that other world is, but then it completely takes you out of it, and nothing from the previous world is applicable at all to the new world that has gone in. So why not simply start in the new world and then maybe have a flashback to start out or something of that nature? And maybe some shows do that, but even still, I think a lot of shows starting in the original world and then tearing you away from that immersion, especially like to the extent that Eminence in Shadow does it, but I'll get to that in a second, really kind of breaks the immersion. And it's okay to kind of establish a world, right? If you can make it something that's reasonable for the future of the story. So Subaru, when you kind of are introduced to him, he's just in a grocery store grabbing groceries, and then he's sent into the other world. We don't know anything about his character at all. You kind of learn the bits about him and his life once he actually gets to the other world. And that's just kind of jarring. You're kind of taken aback by that, and it's like, why? Like, why did we start here? Why can't it just be like, he wakes up and he's like, I ended up here because, like, I think there's other ways to go about approaching it at the very least, because the previous world that he's in has zero bearing to the story, so why are we even, like, starting there? Again, I think the idea is the difference between, like, a taking off point and establishing a universe. A taking off point is a place you want to start the story. You want to get things going in order to understand the premise. But then, like, once you get into a situation where you are establishing a world and you're immediately taken out of that world, you're like, why did you establish that world in the first place? And ReZero is forgivable, I think. I don't want to say that it's just like, oh, that's so awful that he's not in the grocery store anymore. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm super torn up by that fact. But I think it gets into perspective a little bit more when you talk about something like The Eminence in Shadow. The entire first episode of The Eminence in Shadow is dedicated fully to setting up a world that you never go back to. And that world is kind of a typical modern day world. It starts with this girl who is a child star. And this child star girl is like kind of scared of going outside, right? She does not like the idea of even stepping foot outside of her door. And initially, kind of the way that it's framed, I thought it was just kind of a paparazzi thing. But it turns out the reason why she's afraid to go outside is because she was kidnapped at a young age. And she was kind of born into a rich, famous kind of family. And so every time she goes outside and walks, she's scared that she's going to get kidnapped again. So she has like a private chauffeur. The chauffeur does not show up. He's getting like beat up after school one day. And she has to walk home herself. And lo and behold, she gets kidnapped again. And it is up to the main protagonist to come in, swoop in, save the day, and kind of explain his positioning within the show, right? This is a really interesting premise, right? And this girl is not delved into lightly. You are kind of brought straight into the eye view of this girl. And honestly, this girl, who I can't even really think of the name of because she's completely forgotten about past this first episode. If the entire show was written through her eyes, talking about the guy who ends up being the main character, Shadow, it would be a fantastic show because she just kind of has this like aptitude about looking at things through this like lens, and it's really just kind of an interesting premise and setup. But then at the very end of the episode, you see Truck Kun come in, the main guy gets isekai'd, right? And so that world that we spent an entire 20 minutes of an anime that's 20 episodes, the entire first episode, is dedicated to exploring a character who is purely there to set up a world that doesn't get explored further. And it's the difference between a starting point and establishing a world. And The Eminence in Shadow really explores and delves into this world that is never gone back to again. And as somebody who likes to really kind of dig into these stories and get myself invested, it breaks the immersion because you've got those first couple episodes to really kind of hook you in, hook, line, and sinker. Okay, where's my investment? And it takes that first episode and it's like, hey, yeah, that was meaningless. You didn't need to pay any attention to that at all. And that's where ReZero, I think, did better than The Eminence in Shadow. Though I still think ReZero having a scene in another world, like in the initial, like, normal world, is still, like, ultimately pointless. And I think that there's just a better way for isekais as a genre to go about this transition from one world to the next. Do I have a solution for what that may be? No. As I said, I think it could be better explained maybe in like a flashback or something, but I think that this is something that honestly there should be, instead of having just a little bit of time dedicated to, I think it should be next to zero time if it's not going to be explored in a meaningful way. So, even though I understand the establishment of a story is very important, if you are establishing a world and then you are going to actively kind of slap the viewer in the face and ignore that world entirely for the rest of the show, that's where I kind of have a big problem with isekai. But I'm a rom-com guy, and I know that I am the antithesis of all things isekai in saying that I'm a rom-com guy. So, with that said, if you disagree with me, leave a comment as to why this model actually works. I'd love to read your comments. I always read my comments. And if you like this video, even if you disagree, I'd appreciate it if you liked it and then, subscribed. I also have Japan vlogs coming up. My editor can probably also leave a video here talking about, how he's working hard at that, or maybe how he's not working hard at that. I don't know how my editor's doing on my Japan vlogs. I just give him the footage and he does his own thing with it. It'll probably put me in a very embarrassing light. But that said, they are coming soon, I promise. That's all from me, and I will see you guys in the next video.